Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Thanks for joining us here on Reading with Your Kids. You are looking wonderful today. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can help us with that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show, letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, CastBox, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have two wonderful guests for you today. Kim Hillyard will be joining us to celebrate Mabel and the Mountain. And later in the show, we'll be welcoming Alycia Pace. She'll be here to celebrate how to put a dinosaur to bed. Before we invite our guests into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from Wimbledon in the United Kingdom. Our guest is here today to celebrate her debut children's book. Is called Mabel and the Mountain. Please welcome to the show, Kim Hillyard. Hey, Kim, how are you?
Hello, I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. It must be exciting to see your very first book in print, to be able to hold it and share it with the world.
It's the best feeling ever. It's a real milestone achievement, and I feel like, hooray, I'm finally here. So very exciting indeed. Thank you.
You know, folks, you're listening and you can't see, but Kim has this just absolutely beautiful, huge, radiant smile on her face. And all the emotion that you're hearing is sincere.
Thank you very much. It's also because my husband has gone to pick my two children up from school. So I have a sense of freedom speaking to you as well. Just very exciting. But I'm also very excited about the book. Of course I am. And it's lovely to have some time to talk about picture books with you, which is my favorite thing to talk about. So thank you.
Well, let's talk about one picture book in particular, Mabel and the Mountain. Tell us about this book, please.
So, yes, it's my debut picture book. I'm a self-taught illustrator as well. So I've been writing and drawing pictures ever since I was tiny. It's my favorite thing to do. But certainly I worked as a music journalist for nearly 10 years, actually, and a drama teacher, and spent lots of time writing, and felt, if not confident in terms of picture book writing, confident as a writer. I knew it was something I loved to do, and I'd certainly done it for work. But the artistic side, the illustration, I was really nervous about, but I knew that I could do it. I hoped I could do it. And so I did. And so to have a book as an author and an illustrator is super, super exciting. And Mabel in the Mountain is a story about believing in yourself, no matter how tiny you are. Mabel is a tiny fly, and she dreams about climbing a huge mountain. And all of her fly friends tell her that it's not possible, but still she goes ahead. And along the way, she encounters various hurdles, some stronger than her, some are faster than her, some people are rude along the way, but eventually, after taking lots of tiny steps, she reaches the top. So the book is so special because in lots of ways it echoes my own journey to becoming a picture book author and illustrator as well.
You know, as a self-taught illustrator, it must have been a little bit daunting, kind of proposing that, yeah, I'm glad you love the manuscript, but I should be the one that illustrated it. You know, traditional publishers, wow, that's easy for you to say. Traditional publishers, you know, don't take chances very often.
So my journey to publication started with another manuscript, and I illustrated that whole picture book from start to finish. And I had various meetings I had one meeting with a very kind agent who got back to me and said, let's talk about your work. And she said to me, it's interesting, but it's just far too complicated. And I'd thrown everything at it. It had taken me a whole year to put together this book, this dummy book with these illustrations. And I came away from that meeting really just like downhearted, and what do I do next? And I pretty much wrote the text for Mabel in almost one sitting. And with the illustrations, I also decided to simplify them hugely. And then I had this other text, and I had 2 or 3 pages of illustration. And I sent them off to another bunch of agents and publishers, and I heard back, which was incredible. But certainly in terms of the illustrations, I think, yes, just having that confidence and having somebody say to me, you're, you know, almost trying too hard. It's okay to simplify this. And I really forced myself with the illustrations. And you can see it in this book. They're bright primary colours. They're very simple. They're very painty. I use a mix of everything's hand-drawn and painted. So I guess, yes, having the confidence in those illustrations is really, really scary, but it's an amazing feeling.
I bet it must be. As someone, I have zero visual art skill. So I am in awe of somebody who can tell a story with paint. My beautiful wife is in her retirement is embracing watercolors and drawing, and she is amazing at it, and I'm very jealous.
Do you know there's a beautiful picture book which you might be familiar with? It's by Peter H. Reynolds, and it's called Ish. Do you know that book?
I
And
do.
it's just gorgeous, and it's about the little, you know, the main character, Ramon, who draws everywhere, draws everything, and his older brother makes fun of his drawings, and so he crumples them all up and throws them away, and eventually gives up drawing. And then he goes to his little sister's room and finds that she's saved all of his crumpled drawings, put them all, you know, all around her bedroom. And she said, this is one of my favorites. And he says, oh, you know, that doesn't look, I can't remember what it is. That doesn't look like a vase of flowers. And she says, oh, but it looks vase-ish. And I loved that book so much. And, you know, this concept of if the art can tell a story and it's got heart and soul. And I often say when my husband looks at my drawings, like, is that a fly? I'm like, well, you know, it looks fly-ish. So certainly that's been a big influence for me. I think everybody's got, you know, the ability. Sorry, I'm stroking my cat as I'm talking to you. I've just been distracted. My cat's come in to see me. I think everybody's got the ability to express themselves in some artistic manner. And a lot of doing the illustration for me is about not looking at other artists or illustrators' work, particularly when I'm working on my own illustrations, and really allowing myself to just have full enjoyment, I suppose, of the process and not get caught up in this kind of, it needs to be more complicated, or it needs, you know, my illustrations aren't super, super detailed, and I love those illustrations in picture books. There's nothing more amazing than a full spread with lots and lots of tiny details in it. But equally, you know, my illustrations are bright and simple and colourful, and I love making them. So
That's
Ish,
wonderful.
the power of Ish.
The power of Ish. Well, Peter has actually been on the podcast.
Wow.
And I wasn't the one to interview him. One of my interns snagged that interview. And Peter actually owns a bookstore that is about a mile away from our studios here.
That's fantastic. Well, send him my heartfelt-ish like regards.
I shall.
Thank you.
What is it about picture books that you love so much?
I love creating something for children to start with. So I absolutely love that whole wonderful world. I can still remember the picture books that had the hugest impact on me when I was small. So I worked as a drama teacher for quite some time, and this idea that young people, providing them with worlds that can empower them, make them feel good. I love the magic of the whole thing. I love the colours. I just think everything about picture books is absolutely fantastic, and they have the power to transform young lives and young minds, but they also are just hugely fun. So there's so much to love about them. Yes, they are my favourite thing.
You know, I look back and there's so many wonderful picture books that I read to my kids when they were young, and they certainly can transform kids' lives. But I think there were a lot of books there, and I don't know if they transformed my life, but they certainly reminded me of the person that I wanted to be and hadn't quite got there yet, and reminded me to work harder to kind of become that person.
That's a lovely thing to say. And I think often something magic about picture books is that they can distill what can maybe seem like a very overwhelming or complex message into something so simple. And often it's the interplay between text and image. And actually, those little moments have so much power and so much meaning. There's a picture book, the picture book when I was a tiny child, there's a picture book called Dogger by Shirley Hughes. It's about a little boy that loses his toy at the school fair. And there's a moment where another child picks the toy up because it's been put for sale on a toy stall. And he doesn't know what to do. This little girl has bought his toy, and his older sister comes along, and she's won this huge, beautiful teddy with a big blue bow, and she swaps the big, beautiful teddy for her brother's toy and so eventually the boy gets his little toy back. And that moment of sibling affection and kindness, it makes me cry just thinking about it now when I read it to my children. But also as a little girl, it was just this huge moment, completely beautiful. And she's very nonchalant when she does it. The older sister, here, would you like my big teddy instead? There's just something so beautiful about that tiny little moment, seemingly throwaway moment, but in picture book language, in picture book world, is huge, and it had such an impact on me, and it still does on my children now. And they last, don't they, these picture book stories? And how amazing to read to our own children, or, children at the local library, or if we go out and about reading picture books, wherever it is we share these stories, and that those messages still have that same power now. So I love that about it too. Yes, amazing.
As you're speaking and talking about you becoming emotional yourself as you're reading it, there are many, many books that made me kind of stop and feel very emotional. Look at that. I'm afraid to say tear up.
You can cry. You're allowed.
And I do. I just don't like talking about it. But I think allowing our kids to see us in that vulnerable moment, that emotional moment, I think it can't be faked. But if you allow yourself to be open and vulnerable with your kids, I think that's an incredibly powerful and bonding experience for a family.
I completely agree. And having that little moment, that's another powerful thing, isn't it, about picture books, that they create a tiny moment of shared experience between you and your child, you and the children you're reading to. There's a stillness. There's, they're like a moment of poetry, isn't it, really? That connection. And it's not a huge amount of time. How long does it take to read one, really? 5 minutes? Less than 10 minutes? So much can happen in that moment of togetherness, of sharing a book together. And I love the idea, you're completely right, of the grown-up being willing to talk about their emotions as well. Yeah. It's so important. But sometimes even in just the reading of the book, if you're a grown-up that finds it hard to access those emotions or share them, just the act of sitting and sharing, reading an emotional story with a child, I think goes some way to having that effect as well, and saying, I'm a human too. I have feelings.
Yeah. I think that's so very, very important. And it's it's a real kind of benefit for our mental health, I think.
Yes, hugely. So Mabel in the Mountain, actually, there's certainly an element of this conversation about mental health, mental well-being, sharing feelings. The publishers that I work with, they talk about emotional intelligence, which maybe you wouldn't say to a child, but it's a lovely concept. It's this idea of keeping us sharp and snappy, our emotional intelligence. And Mabel in the Mountain, she's so tiny and she wants to do this huge thing. And a lot of it is about saying, yes, not only does she, spoiler alert, reach the top, but she does it completely in her own way. And there are going to be hurdles along the way in life with whatever we do. And it's okay to admit to that. But really, it's about putting one tiny fly footstep in front of the other, and you will get there in your own time. So the book certainly touches on these themes of mental health, of saying sometimes things are hard, and that's okay. But actually, the best thing you can do when something is hard is not just to keep going, but to take your time and accept that we're all different, and hopefully we all get to where we need to be in our own way. It's a privilege to be able to start conversations like that with children, I must say, and between children and their grown-ups. And I hope the book can go some way towards doing that.
As you're speaking, I was reminded, we've talked a lot here on the podcast about a bunch of different things since we've had 2,000 episodes. But, a couple of thoughts is, there are a lot of parents out there, not as many, I think, nowadays. The trend is kind of reversing, but they want to bubble wrap their kids. They don't want anything bad to happen to their kids, and they're very overprotective. And we also talked about how kids love spooky stories because it kind of gives them a chance to face difficult moments in their imagination and kind of work out, what would I do if I encountered a monster? And I'm thinking a book like Mabel in the Mountain is a real good way to help kids first understand that I am going to fall. I'm going to have bumps in the road. Everything's not going to be perfect. I'm going to get bumps and scrapes and bruises, but it's okay as long as I pick myself up and keep going.
Yes, absolutely. And I also hope that with the book, it comes across that message in, I'd say, a light-hearted way. Not necessarily that, but it's not too heavy. It's almost a kind of a resolute, as you say, yes, that, some are faster, some are stronger, some are plain rude, but we keep going. And we can get there. And actually, with the support of the people around us who are aware of maybe what we're going through or the journey we're on. And there is a little moment where all these flies who have said, no, Mabel, stay at home. Flies, flies don't climb, they fly. And there's a moment where all the little flies return and buzz around her as she's nearing the top of the mountain. And that's me climbing. You can see that. Other people, the listeners can hear me climbing the mountain. So, yes, it's also about support. And actually, an interesting fact for you is when I sent the illustrations off for the book, I had Mabel only ever climbing the mountain alone. And one of the editorial suggestions was, can her fly family and friends appear not when she's reached the top, but somewhere along the way. And so I added them in, when she's getting near the top, they suddenly surprise Mabel. And I'm so glad that suggestion was made, because it's so true. There was a part of me that wanted to initially illustrate the book and make it seem it's Mabel, it's her journey, but we don't, I hope, live in isolation. And actually the support of friends and family, even if it's one friend, one member of your family, when you're setting out to do really anything, just living life, is so paramount to our mental well-being and our sense of self. So yes.
Yeah. You also wanted to talk a little bit today about another book from your imagination, Ned and the Great Garden.
Ned and the Great Garden Hamster Race. Yes. So that will be my second book that's coming out. And this is a story about kindness. And it follows the journey of Ned the hamster, who jumps out of his little hamster home and enters the Great Garden Hamster Race. And he's up against hamsters from all over the world. And very quickly, he's at the front of the race. And he's running faster and faster, and he's winning. And it's super cool. But along the way, he runs past various critters that need his help. So if he runs past a little lost slug, I haven't got time to help you. He runs past some hungry pigeons underneath, I should say. Hasn't got time to stop for lunch. And he runs past, jumps over a giant hole, I should say, with somebody in it shouting, "Help me!" And he just doesn't have time. And then he gets lost. And then some people help him. And he's near the finish line. And actually, instead of running over the finish line, he decides to go back and help everyone else along the way that he's missed. So Ned is a story about how we all have this wonderful drive to win, to achieve, to race. But actually, the race is so much more brilliant when we share our time, we share our talents, we share our resources along the way. And actually how much better it is to cross that finish line having done that, rather than, I think, eyes on the prize, blinkers on. So it's a story about kindness alongside what maybe I perceive to be this idea that we're all just running our own race, trying to achieve. There's nothing wrong with that. But actually, if we can take a little moment to pause, go back, build some community, perhaps, then that win feels even more special. So that's what Ned's about.
As you were speaking, I was reminded of the many pictures I've seen of a racer at the end of the race stopping to help his competitor who is falling just inches, feet from the finish line, and they cross together. And how fantastic it makes you feel when you see that.
Incredible when you see moments like that. I completely agree. And I think also it's this, idea that when we speak to young people, sometimes I think we've spent a lot of time, or certainly when I was younger growing up, and it's, what do you want to be when you're older? What are you going to do? What are you going to do next? Go, go, go. The world is your oyster. And of course, that's amazing. That's absolutely beautiful. And we should all be striving to be the best version of ourselves. But actually, if we can along the way start saying to young people, who are you going to bring with you? You're so talented. What else can you do with those talents to, if not make the world a better place, because that feels like a huge weight, just your community, those around you. And I think we need a little bit more of that. We always need a little bit more of that. So
absolutely. I'm curious. You were mentioning earlier that your kids, your husband went out to pick up your kid and give you this little bit of freedom. I'm curious, what do your kids think that mom is now a published author and illustrator?
Thank you for asking. That's a lovely question. I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. My 5-year-old is so incredibly stubborn in a fantastic way that we very, very rarely ever read Mummy's book. No. But very sweet. On her first day or her first week of school, they had to bring in a little shoebox full of things that meant something to them. And with almost no fanfare, she went and got a copy of Mabel, put it in. So we've hardly read it. And the 2.5-year-old, she'll say, "Mummy," when she sees the pictures, but she's not quite aware yet. But, my 5-year-old, I think she likes it. She is very much a Ned, I should say. She is racing along. Yeah. So one day we can talk about it when she's maybe a tiny bit older.
Well, let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and find out more about the book that your daughter doesn't want to read.
Thank you so much. So my name is Kim Hillyard, which is, you can find me on Instagram, X, Twitter, my socials, and my website. So it's all my name, KimHillyard. Kim Hillyard. KimHillyard.com. It's got my books on it. So yeah, thank you so much.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Mabel and the Mountain. Our guest has been Kim Hillyard. Kim, thanks for being with us.
I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Utah. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new board book. It's called How to Put a Dinosaur to Bed. Please welcome back to Reading with Your Kids, Alycia Pace. Alycia, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. It's a warm day and it's nice to be inside chatting with you while my kids go to the pool.
You know something, we're talking about how to put a dinosaur to bed, and I had an epic cross-continent journey a couple of years ago where I drove from Boston to Orlando to St. Louis to Los Angeles and then back to Boston again. And on the way home, I drove through Utah, and I felt alternately like I was on the moon or like I was going to run into a dinosaur.
What caused that feeling? Well,
it was the interstate that I was on took me through the rocks, and it was a landscape. Well, I thought it was a moonscape, but it just, it's not like anything we have over here on the East Coast. Yeah, so it was quite thrilling and beautiful and different, and I didn't expect it. So I'm just driving along, and all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, how did I get here on the moon?
I haven't heard that one yet. I love it.
Well, we're talking about putting a dinosaur to bed, and this is a story, a board book for for kids who love to consume books, like literally chew on them and consume them. And what do you think it is that about dinosaurs that little kids just love?
Probably that they're so giant. And so for a child to think about something so big might be thrilling, I guess. My son loves dinosaurs. So do my daughters. So, yeah, I think they feel so small. And so something scary and powerful, I guess, is intriguing to them.
Yeah, we've talked here on the podcast about, spooky middle grade novels and scary stories. They're so popular because they kind of allow kids to battle these monsters and giants using their imaginations.
Yeah, I like that. I have noticed like my children like scary things more than I would have anticipated and more than I did as a child. So when you talk about fears, I do think about that a little bit with COVID, that maybe the little generation is going to be braver or seek out scary things more than past generations almost. To try to deal with those fears of the world, I guess.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah, I need to remind myself that we have a generation of young kids who went through COVID. Well, we all went through COVID, but, being almost 100 myself, those 2 years that we were locked up was just the 2% of my life, whereas a 4 or a 5-year-old, that's like half of their life.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
Think about.
So what's the story that we're going to experience and how to put a dinosaur to bed?
Internet connection. Should I stop the video?
Let me just stop the recording here. Alycia experienced a little bit of technical difficulty, and now she's locked herself in a closet, and she'll be able to continue on with our conversation. I think you were about to tell us what kind of story we're going to experience when we read How to Put a Dinosaur to Bed.
Yeah, so the hope of the board book is to be a tool. Obviously, as a parent myself, so my first book was How to Potty Train a Dinosaur, because potty training was a bit of a nightmare. And I would say the second nightmare of parenting is the dreaded bedtime. It's exciting and dreaded at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. Once you get over the obstacle, magnificent, but getting there sometimes is quite a difficult feat. And so this book is in hopes to kind of help the children put themselves in their parents' shoes a bit and see how it might feel to be exhausted and trying to get this playful, excited dinosaur to go to sleep and stay in bed. That's another tricky part, is not just getting them to bed, but to stay in bed. So that's the premise of the board book.
Awesome. It's been a while. My kids are 28 and 30 right now, but I do remember it was difficult at bedtime to get them to, like you said, not only go to bed, but stay in bed.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what an interesting strategy to kind of write a story to help them kind of have some empathy for their parents.
Yeah, some role reversal to make it playful. I noticed my children, just in general, if I would reverse roles during play, that it was interesting to see how they would respond as a parent if I'm playing the child. And so that was fascinating to me. to have them to have to think about things differently, step out of their skin a little bit and see what it would be like. And I think as a parent, I need to also do the same to them to try to like put myself in their shoes as well sometimes. But yeah, creating this book was a fun thing to kind of, to switch the roles up a bit.
Now, I'm always curious where an inspiration for a certain book comes. And I know very oftentimes a publisher or an agent will come to you and say, we need a book to help parents at bedtime. What about this book? How did this book come to life?
Well, it was definitely partially what you just mentioned. Yes, we want a book. And they liked the dinosaur series, but they were excited about the prospect of a bedtime book, but also that it is, yes, our second nightmare of parenting, because my children, they get so excited. Our household is not like the quiet, my children are like reading and writing, and it's, that peaceful, I don't know, all these children with big glasses, and I don't know, I picture those households around the world that have a quiet bunch, but we are not. And so bedtime is, squealing and running around and trying to play games, and we're just a very high energy family. And so, trying to get them to wind down is particularly difficult. So, with that in mind, my heart just goes out to all the tired parents. And so I was excited for that, definitely. But I also have been really enjoying with my illustrations, creating kind of dreamlike color schemes and more whimsical and magical elements. And so the prospect of a bedtime story, I tried to bring in a lot of purples and just sort of some fun whimsy within it. Seeing that it was a bedtime story, it felt appropriate. So that was really fun for me.
Very cool. I don't know if those quiet, refined families that you were referring to actually exist in real life. I've never run into them, and our neighborhood has kind of been transformed in the last few years, and we have lots of new families and lots of young kids. And as I take Augie the Wonder Dog out for a walk after dinner, I'm hearing a lot of families that sound like the way you described your family.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's, this generation does have a lot of, screens and activity, and maybe our attention spans. I don't know if it's normal, but I obviously don't remember it being this crazy at bedtime, but I was the child at that point. So yeah, I guess I hope that it's possible for some, but yeah, definitely not for us.
You were mentioning the color palette that you chose for the book. Did I use that term correctly?
Yes, you did.
Look at me, I'm getting fancy here.
Yeah.
How much time do you need to spend in choosing a palette for a book? And do you find yourself going to kind of using the same kind of palettes a lot, or are you all over the place with your different projects?
So I do find that now I am more, I found the colors that I love, that I delight in. And so I kind of have narrowed down a bit more on How to Potty Train a Dinosaur. I remember bringing in the other publisher books to try to mimic the color scheme a little bit better, so that it could be cohesive with their line of books, because they had particularly mentioned that. And that was fun and kind of helped me, pick vibrant colors and keep it very playful. But as I've kind of established myself in my style, I have found that, I like the emerald tones, the mustard, the teal, the turquoise. I kind of stay in those colors that are kind of my favorites, that evoke kind of a magical wonder, sort of a look. It's just kind of how I like to play. So yeah, I have started. It's a quick process now because I know what I like. And then I just have to cater a little bit depending on the story. And usually my brain kind of can see it before I even start. Just as I'm reading, my brain is so visual that it's pretty immediate for me to picture how I'm wanting it to turn out.
Wow.
And the direction I want to take it as far as the look and feel.
Yeah. So for you, it sounds like, at least for this book, the words came first.
Yes. And that often is how it goes for me. I think I've always worked that way.
Uh-huh. Interesting. Because I am completely devoid of any kind of visual artistic talents, I always find it fascinating talking to illustrators to find out how they take their talent and put it on the page.
Yeah, it's a fun process for sure. I try to keep it playful, and it's not super structured, but yeah, I do typically write it out first. Yeah. Sometimes there'll be maybe characters already drawn, but for the most part, yeah, I jump into the writing first.
You know, you reminded me before we started recording that the last time we spoke, we were talking about Costa Rica, probably inspired by my trip down there. Are there particular places that you visited that inspire some of your artwork?
Definitely. I served a Christian mission in Paris, in France, and I feel like that has really impacted my style. I just got back from Japan recently, and that was really fun. And I do feel like I do draw some elements of like pattern, and it's just so fun to see different things because I do find myself within my drawings kind of reverting back to what I'm surrounded by. And so it's really fun to try to let my travels kind of seep into how I create things and how I draw. So for sure.
Yeah. Since you were over in Japan, any desire now to create manga and anime?
I hope I don't hurt anyone's feelings, but no. I lived in Japan as a kindergartner, and I had my favorites then, but for some reason I just haven't ever resonated with the art style. But that is unusual. There are many artists who love it, Mm-hmm. But I would say, sadly, no, not for me. But I did love the patterns and the architecture, and so much about it was really inspiring to me.
What is it about this board book age group that you love writing for?
Ooh. Okay, so there's the selfish part of me that, for me, I love starting and finishing a project pretty quickly because I love new ideas and exploring new worlds and new books. And so I love the pace of creating a board book. It's like, it feels fun from start to finish. There are times I'm working on a graphic novel right now, but I'm still in like kind of the beginnings of it. I'm sure by the end it will feel a little bit like a marathon. Uh-huh. But board books are just a quick little fun, it feels like a dessert from start to finish, So, that's definitely part of it. As a parent, I like board books a lot as far as owning them because I know they're not going to get ripped up. So I like them for that. And I also enjoy reading them to my children because they're quite short, and along with the bedtime theme, I do enjoy short books at bedtime, and I have found other parents also feel this way. So, you're pretty excited at that point to get some quiet time for yourself. So I do appreciate the length for reading out loud.
Unfortunately, my kids didn't stay in that board book fandom for very long. I think my son had me reading him the first Harry Potter book when he was 5, I think.
Oh, whoa.
And thankfully, by the time book 2 came out, he was reading on his own.
Oh man, yeah. My 5-year-old is still really excited about my board book, so I'm glad about that.
You were mentioning that you're working on a graphic novel. Can you tell us a little bit about that, or is it hush hush?
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, I probably can. I haven't really submitted it around. I guess I can give like a broad, it's about a girl who steps into a magical dollhouse where everything is perfect and easy, and pretty soon finds out it's not what it seems. So yeah, it's been really a fun project. But yeah, it will probably, like I said, feel pretty long by the end of it, but I'm right now still in the magical phase of feeling like everything is like I'm discovering the story still.
Neat.
Yeah.
We had a couple of years ago, I interviewed almost back to back 2 artists creating graphic novels. And the first artist was sharing with me, I made these characters really simple because I knew I was going to have to draw them about 1,500 times, and I didn't want to work really hard. And that made perfect sense to me. And then the next artist I spoke to, she was saying, it's so hard because I'm drawing about ancient Greece, and there's so much detail, and it takes forever to do a panel.
Oh, no.
Where do you fall in that kind of range?
So knowing myself and how I do like to work quickly, I've developed a style that's kind of pretty loose and sketchy. And so I have kind of timed myself on the pages. I started finishing out a few of the beginning pages, even though I haven't quite settled on the story. But I can work pretty fast. So as long as hopefully that won't diminish the magic, but I keep it really, really loose. I feel like the more I noodle and put details in, it loses life. I feel like my initial sketches kind of have more energy in them, and it feels like I'm killing it as I keep rendering. So I keep it real loose and fast.
Awesome. That's a great feeling when you're creating something and you're just like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm great.
Yeah, that does come sometimes.
Tell me, what advice would you give to a parent or grandparent who's listening that has a young one in their home that just loves to draw, loves to create? How can they best support that interest?
Yeah, and a lot of people wonder if they should start digital right away, and I would say not to. I think that would impact how they're creating. But yeah, I would say right now ideas are going to be more important than creating realism, if that makes sense. So with AI and all that it can do, we really need to make sure that our heart's in it. So it should be less about technique and more about storytelling and conveying emotion and humanity. So I think that's the only way we'll be able to separate and feel relevant as artists, unless they want to be like an art director who's just directing the AI. And I do see how it can be a magnificent tool, I guess, kind of like a calculator was for mathematicians to kind of speed things up. But for those of us who love the process of, exploring and discovering as you create, there's kind of like just a beautiful process there where you're not sure where it's going, and then it continues to evolve as you're making it. But so I would say for the children to try to copy other things less, try to be someone else, try to be like so-and-so, because that's no good, because you can insert their art into AI and have it spit out whatever you want. So we need originality and we need heart and soul in our artwork. So however that looks and however that feels for them, that's kind of a wishy-washy response. But as far as the technicality goes, I did start my journey by duplicating, replicating from other artists to see how they were handling, how do they draw eyes, how do they draw noses. So that kind of helped me start thinking about different ways of interpreting things on the page. And so that was really helpful. It wasn't like reading or doing those like step-by-step books that they have for children, but it was more of copying other artists' lines to see how they were interpreting the world.
I love that advice to encourage kids to really kind of illustrate the emotion and the feeling and not worry so much about being technically perfect.
Yeah. And looking back, I mean, when I was in my early stages, everything felt kind of stiff because I was trying to draw from pictures or make it perfect. And that is what I'm noticing in AI is that there is like that lack of heart and energy because it is created by a computer. So yeah, that's where the focus should be is expressing yourself, right? Not trying to replicate something else, but expressing how you see the world and what your thoughts are on it. And that's how I think we'll be able to stand out in the future.
I like that. And I know that we're going to find a lot of heart and emotion in How to Put a Dinosaur to Bed. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about this book and find out more about you.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. If you Google it, I'm sure there's several places that you can find it. They say it's where all books are sold, so I'm not sure what that means, but I know Barnes & Noble and Walmart are carrying it, and I am at Pace Paintings on Instagram, and my website is AlyciaPace.com, so love to hear from any listeners that have any questions. And I also teach some classes on Skillshare if their little artists are wanting some more little bits of art fun.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of How to Put a Dinosaur to Bed. Our guest has been Alycia Pace. Alycia, thanks so much for being back with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedlyMagic on Twitter. You heard our commercials for Drawing with Your Kids and STEM is Family Fun. All of those videos can be found on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, our website, it's readingwithyourkids.com. Lots of great things there at readingwithyourkids.com. You can go to our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame. You can send us a message by using the contact button at the top of the page. And if you're an author, you can find out how you can be a guest here on Reading with Your Kids and let the world know about your fantastic children's book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we're going to start by thanking our fantastic guests, Kim Hillyard and Alycia Pace. Be sure to check out their books. Mabel in the Mountain, of course, is Kim's book, and How to Put a Dinosaur to Bed, that's Alicia's great new board book. I want to thank my team. I couldn't do this without them. Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Judy Hu, Stella Charest, Hannah Bosange, Alyssa Montiero, Julia Lippman, Devin Hill, Riley Oluwu. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. You're pretty amazing. We wouldn't be able to do this without your support. Thank you so very much. And thank you for making the world a better place. You do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you.